Bien, vamos a comenzar con la siguiente conferencia de Kay Wackwitz, espero haberlo dicho bien, CEO de Drone Industry Insights, que nos va a hablar de después de todo el hype que hemos tenido con la industria de los drones, qué es lo que viene a continuación. Kay, ¿nos escuchas?
Hello, good morning.
How are you? Be my guest, please. Welcome to Expodronica and tell us about all what is next in the drone industry, please.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, first of all, for the invitation and the possibility to speak here. Let me briefly introduce myself and our company. So today I want to talk about the drone industry and the hype that you see or maybe not see anymore. So what I want to highlight is a few market dynamics, the effects of the coronavirus crisis, and some trends and outlooks. But let's dive right in. My name is Kay Wackwitz. I'm working for Drone Industry Insights. We are an independent market research and consulting firm. We do market research only in the commercial drone space. And our goal is to make the commercial drone market more transparent, to help companies and individuals to be successful in this new evolving market. Now, what are we offering? How do we help people? We offer a wide range of publications and products. We have a lot of free content. We have paid reports. We have white papers, blogs, databases, you name it. On the other side, we help clients with very individual products. So that can be feasibility studies, commercial due diligence, projects, and so on. So it's quite a wide range. And we are, again, very dedicated to this commercial drone space and nothing else really. So let's start at the beginning. We live in a very disruptive world where technology has an increasingly, important or dominating aspect in our lives. So the same accounts for drones and aviation. So things that are being done manually or being done with a lot of effort can now be done from the air pretty easily via drone. So a few years back when drones were very new, there was a lot of hype in the conversation about these drones, about the capabilities of these drones. So if we look at the hype cycle, which is a way to describe technologies, you have a technology trigger in the beginning, then everyone says, oh yeah, this is great, and there's a big hype building up until a maximum hype point. Then after a while, this hype flattens down to a so-called drought of disillusionment until it all the way goes up the slope of enlightenment to the so-called plateau of productivity. Now, if we look at the adoption curve below, we see that the innovators in the beginning and the early majority are those who pick up technologies quickest, right? And these are now the industry leaders in this space. Until the broad majority comes, some time elapses. Now, and we are at this point right now, which is a bit tricky. I mean, the good thing is that the hype is over, because the hype is rather a very irrational space. It's a way where the conversation is not very realistic. And now we are basically, through the valley and starting to scale drone operation in the industry. So it's a bit tricky right now because investors jump on things that are being hyped, and now it's basically the opposite. So it's a bit of a tricky time. The good thing is the whole irrationality out of the conversation vanished, and now we are more in a let's bring these products to market kind of conversation. So that's a good thing. But as you can see, as these manufacturers and as these services and software companies start to scale, a lot more venture capital goes into this market. Probably some time will elapse until some of these drone companies will go public. A few of them are already public, but it's just a handful, and the broad majority is quite in an early stage still. Now, if we look at the market in numbers, like how big is this number? What are we talking about here? Now, if you look at 2020, we look at a market size of $22 billion, and we expect the market to grow to $43 billion in 2025 at a compound annual growth rate of nearly 14%. How does that look like per region? So we have a split here. We show North America, South America, and so on, and you can see the growth from 2020 to 2025. And you see that in almost all markets, the market volume is going to nearly double, sometimes even more than that if you look at Asia. We also highlighted the most important countries per region. So that's, I think, important to know. We have a market report which explains everything in much greater detail. So I'll just give you a few headlines here so that you have an idea of what we're talking about. What is the context here? Now, if we look at market dynamics, you see quite a lot of dynamics in this market, very general ones. So that's like the increasing degree of automation, mainly in hardware, but also in the software sector. We see very strong developments in the service aspect, as well as software. Different industries are picking up drone technology in different speeds. Regulation is changing, so that's a moving target. And last but not least, probably the most dominating factor this year is certainly the coronavirus crisis. And all of that makes this market very dynamic, very quickly moving. And before you know, the drone shown in the middle is not even available anymore. So, and I think it's very important to understand that this market is very, very quickly evolving, very dynamic, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of moving parts. But the good news is when you use drones, you have the ability to do things much more efficient. You save time, save costs, you increase your product quality, and you even improve your worker safety. Now let's jump on the coronavirus crisis. I'm pretty sure everyone has seen this kind of picture in the last half year. Now, if you ask people what changed, it's not really that people wanted to change. It's not really that people wanted to work from home and build up this digital infrastructure. So who then did it? And as you can see, the answer is pretty simple. So now the question is, what does it mean for the drone space? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? So it really actually goes both ways, but let me get to this a bit later. I have a little overview for you how drones actually helped in this crisis. And it's quite a few things. So what can you do to battle the spread of this virus? So there are a few applications listed here. It goes all the way from medical drone deliveries that you can fly things from one hospital to another, corona tests. Drones are being used for situational awareness, all the way to spraying disinfectant in very warm regions. So there's quite a lot of things where drones can directly help. But the other thing is that most people forget, and that relates to the slide before, is how drones can help indirectly. So if you can't go out because there's a lockdown situation, you can still use drones, right? So you can monitor, for example, the construction site of a new hospital. You can monitor critical infrastructure. You can use it to check your crop's health. And another very important aspect also is weather. We have a lot of flights being cancelled, almost all of them, right? And what people often forget is that mainly every collected weather data comes from flying aircraft. So how do we predict weather if there are no sensors in the air? So there's another thing we need to consider. So we put this case here in as well, how drones actually help to make our life, continue to run in the same quality that we had before, right? So where does this whole thing go? Is it just going down, or is it also going up? Now let's look at the negatives effect first. So the negative effects is mainly for the smaller companies, for the startups. So some of them face bankruptcy because of lacking contracts, or maybe the units sold are not as high as anticipated. So the drop in demand is something that hardware manufacturers and service providers both mentioned would be the strongest impact from the coronavirus crisis. If we look at the upside, it's mainly bigger companies that talk that the coronavirus crisis had a rather positive effect when it comes to drone technology. So reorienting the business models is a very important thing. So this whole shift towards a more digital business models, I think this is something that really came out of this crisis. It's a contactless technology. You can do a lot of things now that you would have done manually. And bigger companies have the firepower, have the money to do this, to scale this. So these are basically the two main effects that come out of the coronavirus crisis for drones. Now, if we look at how people perceive this whole crisis in general in the drone space, you see that really the majority, 54%, perceives it positive. There are some that mention it very negative, no opinion. So this is basically 1/3 of people that don't really know what the effects are going to be. So maybe it's still the same like it was before, but there's no rapid increase, or there's no massive increase in demand. Maybe it's still the same like before, so there's probably no opinion. Now, another important thing, I guess, is the trends that are in this drone space right now. So we have 3 major trends here, and these trends can be sorted, as you can see on the left side, into different levels or hierarchies of trend. So all the drone trends that we see and all the trends that we show in, for example, in our report, are always microtrends, and these trends contribute to a larger trend, for example, a macro trend. And a couple of macro trends then will contribute again to mega trend, like urbanization in this case. So now if we look at the trends that we researched much closer, much greater detail, you have regulatory trends. So that's a dynamic field. You have regulations changing around the world in every country. So it's also not as dynamic as this technological development, but there's a movement there, and that's really good to see. Standards are being created, new frameworks are being created to fly beyond visual line of sight. So all the essential parts are being addressed. And the same accounts for social trends. So the public acceptance is always a big topic, and to make people understand that a drone is not invading your space, but it's a tool that can help you in your daily work, that can streamline even logistic chains. So there's a lot of work to do still to make people anticipate drone technology with something very positive. But I think we're on a good way here. And especially when you look at countries like Rwanda, where you have thousands of medical deliveries, where this is basically now the main way to distribute medical goods. I just read that they delivered over 200,000 of medical products within the last 3.5 months. So I think that's an amazing number. And the social acceptance in these areas is super high because it has a direct impact on the people's lives, positive impact. So if we look at the technological trends, there's a lot because this market is extremely technology driven. So we listed a few here. These are like the main points that we highlight or that we see in the next few years to be extremely relevant for this space. And the bold printed trends are basically those that we evaluated in much greater detail, which can also be found in our market report. So these are the ones that will have the biggest impact in the future for this drone space. And yeah, so if you look at the drone market, I think it's very important to look at it from different angles, from different perspectives, because you always have a manufacturer side, you have a user side, you have a regulatory body that is involved, you have people that are indirectly infected, social acceptance, I just mentioned it. So when we do our research, we always look at this drone market from different angles. And this allowed us to create quite a lot of different reports. As you can see here, we look at the regulatory side, we look at the investment side, we have some dedicated reports when it comes to delivery and what it takes, we have rankings. We also look at the counter-drone space, which is super important to enforce drone rules. So if you want to fly in an urban area, like who's the police in this game, right? So you have a unmanned traffic management system managing all the takeoffs and landings. But what if someone is not, sticking with the rules? What if someone is reckless or criminal and interferes with air traffic? You need devices to enforce the rules in place, right? So we have all these reports created, again, looking from different angles at the markets. We also offer this as a research subscriptions to clients. But yeah, if you look at this market, and I hope that my presentation showed this, we are at a point where the market is getting more and more professional, where the adoption rate is getting bigger and bigger. We are facing a coronavirus crisis, which has in parts a positive effect of on the drone space. Yeah, I hope this helped you to understand a little bit better this commercial drone space. I'm very happy to take any questions now. And yes, thank you very much for your attention so far, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kai. First of all, I have to say that I'm a big fan of your drone market environment reports that you push every year. I think all the people in the industry waits for it every year just to see if their name is and their company is over there. Wonderful work that you guys do since very long time. And yeah, we have some questions from the audience. The first one is how difficult it is to get market data for this industry. Is it still underdeveloped in certain areas?
It is sometimes tricky to get access to certain markets, especially when it comes to language barriers in the Chinese, Japanese, or Indian space. But we managed it. So we have network and sources that are very reliable. So it took us more than 2 years to generate or find enough credible sources that we can use to pull information from. So it was quite challenging, but it's possible. Yeah. Possible. Yeah, we have a good visibility now globally.
Okay, so the second question is, do you think that within the middle range drones, hardware is becoming more irrelevant and AI applications is becoming the key for success?
So I think that AI will have a very big impact, especially when it comes to drone navigation. So the autonomy of a drone. So you basically just send a drone from point A to B, and the drone will manage the rest and avoid obstacles and navigate itself around, tricky environments. AI will also have a very high impact on the data analytics part. So, for example, if you want to inspect a wind turbine and you take 10,000 pictures of a snow white wind turbine, and then you basically just move the effort from the field into the back office, because somebody has to sit there and click there and check every picture for a crack or corrosion, which is, doesn't make sense. So you need software to pre-analyze the data and maybe give you 10 pictures and say, okay, here's corrosion, here's a crack at this and that percentage of probability. So I think AI will have very strong impact in these two fields. I personally don't believe in pure drone autonomy. So I'm very convinced that it's more an augmented scenario. So drones will not just go out there and do something completely on their own. I mean, there are absolutely cases where this will work 100%, no problem. But if you want to inspect a specific damage, let's say, for example, I don't know, the Fukushima nuclear reactor, you have to check if there's a leak somewhere, but you can't send in people. Now, you can't just send in a drone and let it do its thing. You will probably have an inspector still on the end to check the pictures and to see what's going on in there and to navigate the drone to a specific place or view angle. So I think this will be more an augmented space, but I'm pretty sure that this will work really good in parallel, so that you have an inspector flying into Fukushima, but the drone will avoid all the obstacles so that the inspector can purely do his inspection work. I hope that answers.
And what about the... Yeah, sure it does. What about the market? Because as you know, we have passed through some years where it seemed like the drone market had a similar path as the PC market had, with IBM dominating the market. I'm not going to name the AI. Oh, I just did. But so what do you think about it? Because right now it seems like there are some other contenders in the low and middle range area that, let's say Skydio, for instance, that right. They are taking a different approach. So do you think innovation has stalled in the drone market, or is it still as vibrant as we had it some years ago?
Yes, absolutely. The thing is now that there's not so much happening on a broad view, but on a very specific view. So we always say, if you are under pressure from DJI, you're not specific enough in what you do. And you see this in all the flyability drones. You see this with Skydio. You see this with many other examples. So we see now a very strong professionalization in a certain niche. So this is something that we see, and the innovation there is still as quick as from minute one. It's the same thing. It's just not on such a broad basis, but it's now going into the very specifics. So let me put it in a different analogy. So we have the smartphone now, which is like this flying drone platform in what shape ever. And now it goes all the way down to the apps. What can you do with it? How good is that app? How capable is that app? How disruptive that? And that's, I think, what we see now. And the market is by far not done innovating. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to come. And even though there's a dominating player, this player is more a generalist. And we have a lot of other players here that are very professional in a certain niche. And I think, again, this will continue for the next years.
And for the last question, do you think the next step for the drone industry will be drones that can carry higher payloads and just be these aerial robots that we always dream about, like just flying not just around our cities, but doing all kind of different applications? And what kind of energy source do you believe will impose in the future? Because we are seeing hybrid drones with gas and electric. We are seeing some trials with just gas drones, hydrogen drones. Also, the improvement in batteries. What do you think? How will look the market in the next 5 years about it?
Yes. So good question. Yeah, we see a lot happening in terms of drone size. So drones are getting bigger. Drones are getting more capable. I remember 5 years ago how revolutionary it was to be able to put a GoPro on a drone, and now we're flying cinema-size cameras around, right? So that's on the small drone and below 25 kilograms. If you look higher 25 kilograms, you see a very strong development too. And I think this will continue because a lot of logistics companies are now creating new concepts how goods can flow. So let me give you an example. China, for example, is very active in developing very large-scale drones. Could be fixed-wing drones, could also be helicopters. And their idea is basically connecting rural regions to larger cities in terms of logistics, because roads are sometimes very hard to access. If you think about the Himalaya or Gobi Desert area, so you need a way to create infrastructure without creating infrastructure. So this is basically the same thing what happened in Africa a few years back with the cell phones. So you put not a landline into every village, you just gave everyone a mobile phone. So they leapfrogged this step of infrastructure. And this is the same thing that's going to happen with drones in logistics. Therefore, you need bigger and bigger platforms, because it really depends on the case. But you probably want to carry half a ton of cargo into some village, because this is the way how you get goods there. In terms of energy sources, I'm absolutely convinced that we will stick with battery for a while. The infrastructure, the battery handling is very easy. Batteries are quite capable. We can expect a slight increase in power density per kilogram. No revolution really there, but it's good enough for small drones. If you think bigger, you're completely right. We need to consider different sources of energy. Now, burning kerosene like in an aircraft, this is something which definitely works because the energy density is quite high. But the public acceptance to have a gas turbine running somewhere in an urban area is probably very low. So we might need to consider different energy sources, for example, hydrogen. And so I think we will see a development across these different energy sources specific for a use case. There's not like a blanket answer for this, but you will have certainly batteries in the smaller space, and you will certainly have a mix out of gas, be it PTL fuels, kerosene, or hydrogen in the larger drone space.
Do you think we will see a nuclear drone?
Probably not. It's probably the same the same issue that we have with nuclear powered space stations or something like this. Like the risk of having this fall from the sky somewhere into populated areas is just too high.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Kay. It was a pleasure just to have you here, just sharing all your thoughts and all your insights from Drone Industry Insights. Thank you very much.